African history teacher, Professor Hicks. And welcome back after a 3-day absence. But I'm ready to go, and let's get right to it. I just want to remind all of those, please subscribe, share, like. Please subscribe, share, and like. Or if you don't like, comment, But please subscribe at the least. All right, so we're going to take off. This is class number 3. And again, I'm going to try to keep these things short, but it might not work, but we'll continue to try. Try again. All right, so what you're looking in front of you, what you see in front of you rather, is the slideshow that we're going to have today called Human Origins. But before we get to that, let's talk a bit. First things first. Remember, our topic is the first Americans were Africans, class number 3. Please subscribe and comment. And let's go right to it. Recently, we had a celebration, for those who did, of Christopher Columbus Day. Most of you had off. I hope you enjoyed the day off, but I hope you did something other than celebrate the mass killer, Christopher Columbus. I hope that you did something pro Native American, Indigenous American, or Aboriginal American. All three of them we love. All three of them we love, even though we're talking about a topic that is going to debunk much of what we call Native American history as it relates to our history. So let's go to it. So first thing you should know about Columbus, for those who were celebrating and went to the parade and enjoyed the food and stuff, you should know that Columbus never, ever set foot in America. I'll say that again. It is now accepted that Columbus did not discover America. And a lot of good that will do us then, but too late. We has been embedded into our psyche. Further, it is not accepted that Columbus never even set foot in North America. Instead, Columbus spent most of his time in the Caribbean island, and I believe the first place he discovered, the first place he set foot on, might have been Nicaragua. All right, and my memory could be left, but I'm pretty sure it's Nicaragua. Yes, Columbus never set foot in what we would consider the United States. That did not happen. We don't know. Columbus was such a slippery, slidey guy that his letters to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, and then his relationship with Don Juan of Portugal. No one can really tell. There were so many books on this stuff, and I'll tell you, I've been reading them for at least 10 years, and I don't know what Columbus. What we do know, that he was greedy, that he was a monster, and that he started what we will consider today the Ma'afa in African, but the slave trade as we know it. That was his doing. But we know that he never stepped foot in this United States. Okay? All right. So the Native Americans were in North America before Columbus. Yes, we know that. However, even the Native Americans were not the first people in the Americas. Now, hopefully some of you have gotten purchased this book already and started to read it, because I'm still referencing. I go to the book, I do a little reading, and then I get to you guys. All right? So let's continue. Unfortunately, writers of history in the Western Hemisphere have not eliminated the Columbus myth or fairy tale. For example, as of late September 2010, a new study puts the first Africans in the New World through slavery. This is extremely inaccurate. Another inaccuracy is that even now the term race is still being used in the 21st century. How could that be? Every science book I have read lately, and I've read over the last 10 years, has taken race out of the equation. There is no such thing technically as race. Race is a social construct that can be useful to us. I use it. But as a literal piece of fact, there is no such thing as race. And when you speak about it technically, we have to even put a little qualitative on that. So race is still being used in the 21st century. It is on birth certificates, yes. Identification cards. and even traffic tickets. This designation is being used in spite of all the DNA evidence and studies that have explained that there is no such thing as several human races. Now, that's why today I am going to divert a little bit off our topic and give you a quick, brief, hopefully it's brief, slideshow on human origins. Because several races, or as they call it, the polygenesis theory, poly meaning many, mono meaning one, is a farce, and it has been totally obliterated from most current, I say current, scholarship and text. Through DNA and DNA studies, science has now verified that there is only one race. And that race is the human race. Yes, technically we can say there is a human race. But that race originated where? In Africa. And that's why today I'm going to take a little diversionary road and show you what that is about. Show you the evidence. Remember, we're all detectives. And I'm the lead detective, okay? And the lead detective is going to show you evidence that's going to come to a conclusion. Remember, we're not always discussing facts here. We're talking about evidence that leads to conclusion. We are all one human family, and the only thing that separates us besides the color of our skin is our culture. You know, I had a discussion with my wife early today, and she said, you know, Chuck, it's only culture. Yes, your skin might be a little darker than mine. Mine might be a little lighter than yours, but that does not eliminate you from the human race. That is why I think maybe Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to take another little diversionary path. We're going to talk to our Latino family. Because like us, they seem to be having a lot of problems with who they are as a people. When I grew up, my friends were called Hispanic, and I grew up in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood. There were more Hispanics than African Americans at this time. Now they've been given another designation like us, Latinos. You know, Africans first were, you know, I don't like to use the N-word, so I'm not, but, you know, we were called Negroes. And then we became black. And then Jesse Jackson coined another term called African Americans, where we are now. All of these are racial categories that really mean nothing because we are all the same. We are all from one race, and that is the human race. And it just so happens, not that Africans are any superior to anybody else, it just so happens that that race came from Africa. So we're going to get that straight a little bit today, but let's move on because I got a few other things I want to jump on. So as I said, we're going to get to our Latino family because there's a lot of consternation in the black community as it relates to the election of our king and how so many of us know how the Latino community voted for him, and those who are very sorry they did, but they voted for him. But more importantly, how many of them classify themselves as white. We want to talk about why is that? How did that happen? Because like us, Latinos suffer from social amnesia. And like us, they continue to apply these terms to themselves, which continues to classify, separate, and support white supremacy. Because that's what these classifications do. They support white supremacy. All right, let's move on from that. So, this is going to be very interesting today, but just hopefully it's not interesting and long. Okay. So now we're going to talk about how this book got started and some of the evidence. Let me show you a book. I hope you guys can see it because I know I have my slideshow there, but you should be able to see this. This is the book that started it all. Yes, Dr. Ivan Van Sertimont. They came before Columbus. 20 years ago, he wrote that book and the world exploded. It is still one of the most talked about books there are. Dr. David Imhotep based all of his theories discussion, scholarship on much of what's in that book. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima wrote They Came Before Columbus in 1975. 35 years later, Ivan Van Sertima's work has culminated in the publication of this book, They Came Before Columbus. This book was created, meaning now we're talking about Dr. Imhotep's book. This book was created to expand on his seminal work that he started decades ago, and to further illustrate that Africans not only came before Columbus, they came before what we know as Indians. Okay, this book, Dr. David Imhotep's book, has been in the making for several years. To support his thesis that Americans were the first Africans, he proceeded like a detective. We talked about this already. And presented the evidence like a news reporter. So he invites readers to keep in mind, in order to confirm the evidence, that the evidence leads to conclusions, not facts. Now you're going to hear me continue to emphasize this because I'm getting a lot of comments relating to facts and evidence. So it's important that all the listeners and all the subscribers get what they're come here to look for. All right, so he invites all the readers to keep their minds open. This is where cognitive dissonance comes in. The lesson I gave, that some of this information will conflict with old embedded information in your minds and hearts. So, but you got to be open. Give yourself a chance. Listen. I invite readers to keep their minds open in order to confirm that the evidence leads to the conclusion. Readers must trust everything that is written in today's textbooks. Readers who trust everything that is written in today's textbooks may need to fasten their seatbelts because it's going to be a long, rough ride. In this book, there is incontrovertible evidence from 8 articles. 8 articles. Now, this is the evidence that support this thesis. However, the 8th article has not been peer reviewed. So let's talk about the 7 articles. All of these articles have been peer reviewed. Peer-reviewed articles are constructed for authenticity, which allows for a stronger conclusion as any reader can see. Peer-reviewed articles would not support any data that was not authentic or even evidence-based. So in part 1 of this book, the one that we're going to get into this week, peer-reviewed journals were used to support all conclusions. Let me say that one more time. Peer-reviewed, meaning outside sources, outside scholars, outside scholarship has taken these articles, reviewed them as in a collective to see if Dr. David Imhotep's conclusions are correct, or at least supported. In part 1, the peer-reviewed articles were used to support conclusions. Anyone who disagrees with these peer-reviewed articles and their conclusions drawn from those articles are most likely are not historians, that's not an insult, or scholars, but are those who have a hidden political agenda. Do you? I have had several subscribers, I'm not sure if they are subscribers, but viewers, who have made such assertions, but they have not had any evidence, counter evidence against these assertions. So I'm speaking to those people, as well as those who are accepting this knowledge based on the evidence. Let's move forward. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about a theory that has been debunked, again this theory is called the Clovis theory. Now, today we're not going to take time with that because I have a slideshow that I think might interest you. But there are 3 prevailing questions that prove, debunk, accept, or just totally knock it out the park what Clovis is. Briefly, Clovis are the people that Eurocentric writers and, teachers who have posited that they were the first ones in America, or the first native people in America. Now, this Clovis site goes back 9,400 years, and It has been used time and time again by early researchers. I must say early because most of them don't anymore. But because this is something that is still getting a lot of credence, I just mention it briefly. Now, if you have the book or if you have any form of Chat GPT or maybe Perplexity or any AI mode, you can type in Clovis and you'll see that pretty much this theory has been debunked. But we're going to answer 3 questions, and we're not going to do it today. But these are the 3 questions, so hold on. First question is, what is Clovis, and what is the prevailing theory about Clovis? Question number 2, what evidence is there to confirm the new analysis, meaning the one that we're going to present? And the third question we're going to answer later on this week, who were the first people at Clovis, okay? But before we go there, folks, we must get to this very, very important issue called human origins, because in Dr. David Imhotep's chapter 1, he, and I don't say briefly, but he alludes to human origins, because you can't understand any of this stuff if you don't have a little background on human origins. And he goes to it, and maybe what we can do is by this slideshow, we can skip that and go right to the meat and potatoes, as I call it. All right. So the Clovis questions that I just noted to you will be answered later on. Today, we're going to move forward on human origins. Now, one more thing I want to add. Another topic besides the Latino white topic that we're going to go into is the next topic with our book here in Dr. David Imhotep will be the Mongolians. The Mongolians are the Asian people, the one with the epicantral eyefold, who many of us know, the Asian people that came across this Beringer Land Bridge, the Beringer Land Bridge, 3,000 years ago. So they have really only been here 3,000, maybe 3,500 years ago. But today is not the day for that. We'll be coming to that. Let's ground ourselves on who, and what are human origins. And with that, we're going to go through a slideshow right now. So let me put my stuff to the side here. And remember, we're going to jump on this Indian, this Latin American thing. Because to me, that's more important than the human origins thing, because many Latin Americans are in context with this here. Because, why? Because we're talking about them, particularly the Mexican American community and the Mexican community. All right? Even though Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, all the other Latins or Latinos are involved, they are very, very cogent to this particular discussion, particularly in light of the fact that right now the African American community, Hispanic community are at odds with each other. You know, we've always had some odds. I must admit to you, historically, when you look at the history, you can see that we always did not get along. But in the modern era we've had, most of the time Latino Americans have supported us in our civil rights struggle, but you must admit that many of them weren't here as they are populated now during that struggle, so you can't lay everything on their shoulders. But yes, I have been the brunt of Latinos who have called me the N-word and who look at me like I'm a second-class citizen. And we know that's because they are having social amnesia, like many of us. So we can't dump a lot of blame on them. And I think blame is not good wherever it goes. Let's get to understanding who they are and who they think they are and why. Not that they don't deserve some blame. Because in the hood, we're all one people. What happens when they go into the voting block or in the voting booth, I don't know. But in the hood where I have grown up with mostly Latin folks, I have always been supported by them. And I hope they support me now. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to our slideshow. So as you can see in front, it says human origins. Africa, where is the evidence? Where do we come from? Most of the science community, including historians, have accepted the monogenesis theory of evolution. As such, the evidence proves beyond a doubt that Africa is the birthplace of mankind, civilization, and the human race. Africans were the first members of the human race. We're going to get to monogenesis. Africa, the birthplace of humankind. Now, a lot of people talk about evolution, but let's talk about what it is. Evolution, the process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of the earth. Basically, that's saying that we came from a species called Australopithecus, and we are now Homo sapien sapien. Evolution, we evolved. Evolution means that you are evolving. Monogenesis is a theory of human origins which posits a common descent for all human beings, meaning that all people, the human race, comes from Africa. But there's another theory that Europeans were using and making in scholarship called polygenesis, which has been pretty much, I don't want to say it's not still being used, but pretty much, and I know I've been using the word a lot, but pretty much debunked. The doctrine of polygenesis is the doctrinal belief that existing human races have evolved from two or more distinct ancestral types. So in polygenesis, you would think or believe that humanity started in Africa, humanity started in America, humanity started in Europe, humanity started in Asia, all at the same time. But there has been no evidence to prove that. The oldest bones, the oldest species on the planet, I love that on the planet stuff, is in Africa. You cannot find Australopithecus, any of his cousins, Homo erectus, Homo habilis. You can't find their bones anywhere else but in Africa. So for all of you folks who are talking about, oh no, we're not Africans, we're Americans. Yes, you are Americans. Yes, you were the first one American, but you are not in the human cradle of human origins. Let's see if we can prove that. How do we get here? Evidence, scientific proof. See, I'm a scientist, so that's what we do. Due to the historical denial of African history, African-centered scientists and students like you and me must continue to defend theories of an African genesis. As students of African studies, you must be prepared to support historical claims with historical what? Evidence, folks. Students of African history, like you are, must be able to describe the basic scientific facts that support Africans as the first humans on Earth. Now remember, this is going to support everything Dr. David Imhotep says. Because if we are the cradle, Africa was the cradle of humankind, and if, as been proven, we migrated from Africa, then this means you could not have migrated from anywhere else. Humans did not migrate from America to Africa. It could not be, and we're going to see why. Evidence of African origin. Glosier's rule. In its modern version, Glosier's rule states that birds and mammals, that's us, mammals, should be darker in humid and warm environments compared to colder and drier areas. Yes, this is Glosier's rule. This is science by Europeans that have been proven again and again. These studies are used for scholarship in so many different places: anthropology, archaeology, biogenetics, archaeogenetics, genetic archaeology, and biology, I think I mentioned. This is simply saying that if you are a person living in a very warm, humid environment, then you will naturally be darker. Now, you know what? You don't need Glosier's rules to understand this, because Europeans can't live in Africa. When I went to Egypt, Europeans covered themselves up in the sun. They used umbrellas. They understand that if they stayed out there too long, there's a strong possibility that they can get a carcinogen or get cancer. Manola. I forget the term right now, so forgive me. Allen's rule says that the principle is that a warm-blooded animal species have long limb, ears, and other appendages compared to animals living in cold climates whose appendages tend to be shorter. So when you look at Cro-Magnon in Europe, he was shorter because of the colder climates. But if you look in Africa, most Africans are very tall. They have long limbs. They have long faces. And their dociocephalic head is actually long. So when looking at these rules and just using common sense, folks, don't get caught up. Common sense, you know that most Africans are taller than most Europeans. Now, there are certain places in Europe, you know, those Europeans grow tall. But collectively and in general, if you compare those Europeans with those Africans, you will see that the Africans tend to be taller. Okay? And remember, this is all evidence. This is more evidence. There is biology, DNA. DNA has proved all of this. Language and writing. There's writing in South America, where the Africans first landed and moved their way northward. Language there, writing there, that you could only find in Africa. So there's a comparative analysis of the language they saw in South America and the same language and writings you see in Africa. Cultural, we talked about this cultural continuity. The habits, the attitude, the intelligence, the custom, the traits, and the mannerisms, physical cues, food and dress that we carry with us from one place to the other. Morphology, in biology, the study of size, shape, and structures of animals, i.e. the body. When you hear morphology, think about your bones and your body structure. Phenotype. Phenotype is an individual's observable, I can see it, observable traits, such as your height, your eye, your color, and your blood type. This is your phenotype. Phenotype for African people, what you see and observe is their skin. Archaeology, anthropology, paleontology, oral and documented history gives more evidence to this particular statement. Laetoli footsteps. Now, we're not going to go into this today because it will take too long, but these are the first human footsteps found ever in the world. First, and they are in Africa. And we're going to get into what they are. But briefly, somewhere in the Olduvai Valley in Africa, near Uganda, these footsteps were found by Dr. Leakey and his family. They were documented as some of the first footsteps of people who walked upright, meaning Homo erectus. Homo erectus. Think about the term. Use your common sense. Erect, erectus, standing up. Before Homo erectus, we kind of was not crawling on, but we were moving more like the ape species, okay? We are moving on our two legs backward, but we used our four paws to locomote and to drive ourselves forward and backwards. When Homo erectus arrived or developed, we were now called bipedals. Remember that word, bipedal. It means 2 feet. And think about pedaling on a bike. Laetoli footsteps. Here's a brief. Laetoli footsteps are hominid fossils that have been dated to approximately 3.7 million years old. Laetoli was the first place where an adult Australopithecine tooth was ever found. What set Laetoli apart from other sites in the world are footprints as well, which are the earliest footprints we have of our early hominid ancestors. Now, before we were human Homo sapiens, we were hominids. Hominids cover the whole Australopithecine group. Those were hominids, separate from the Pongids. The Pongids were the apes. So somewhere in our history, the Pongids separated from the hominids. And we're going to talk about how that happened. More Laetoli footprints. More Laetoli footprints. This is part of evolution. Now, human origin terms. These terms are important. of all of these terms, the most important is natural selection. Yes, because the Creator, through the environment, has selected some of us to be here and others have been selected out. We are only here, us humans are only here due to natural selection. These are Darwin's theories. Survival of the fittest. Yes, there is evidence, and this can be shown to be almost a fact because almost every species on the planet Earth has gone through this experience. We've already talked about Glosser's rule, and we just talked about Australopithecine. It's a fossil bipedal primate with both ape-like and human characteristics. So this Australopithecine had lots of hair, had a very prognathous mouth, looked more like an ape mixed with a human character. Okay? Allen's rule we talked about already, and let's move on. So let me just say, these rules allow scientists to determine evolution and geographic locations of animals and mammalian species. We are mammals. How and why? Because the women feed their young through milk from their breast, from their tits, as you might know. That is a mammal. When you see them feeding through milk through the breast. Okay, so any mammal you see that you know, that is a part of our species, like dolphins and like whales. Now, this is a video, a wonderful video about the Hadzabe people. They are very popular now on, unfortunately, I should say, they are very popular now on Facebook. I don't like what I see. I was studying this group of people about 10 years ago, along with my college class, I should say. And they were being studied because they are some of the few people left, besides those in sub-Saharan Africa or Saharan part of Africa, that still carry on many of the qualities, characteristics of our earliest ancestors. They still live like that. As you can see in this image, they have shorts on now. And yes, they're becoming civilized. I saw a picture recently. I was just so upset where, you know, the Europeans got out there and they're giving them soda, and these folks see soda and they're reacting in such, you know, like anyone who've never seen a soda before coming from such a background. But they're called the Hadzabe people. Maybe we can get into this film another time, but not today. Concept for discussion. Which one of you folks? Are you an evolution person or a creation person? Creation person is a person who believes that God put us on this earth and that there was no such thing as evolution. We never evolved. We came from Adam and Eve. We came from the heaven. I mean, not the heaven, but the place where Adam and Eve met, and they created. And you are a biblical entrenched person if you believe in creation. But let's see what happens. Key concepts continue. Evolution theorized that man evolved in Africa. Creation theorized that God made man in the Garden of Eden. If you believe in the creation theory, doesn't make you a bad person. You are grounded in religious belief and possibly a Christian or even Muslim. Key to understanding Western and African philosophy. Science versus religion. Which one do you believe? See, this is where the Africans are unique. Because, see, we never, ever thought there was a difference. Science is a systematic study of social and natural world through scientific methodology. Based on what? Together, family, evidence. Religion is based on a belief system where people worship a deity or God. Faith, belief. This is why I never argue with people who have religiosity, because you cannot shake someone from their belief. Don't do it, folks. If a person tells you, no, God is accept what they believe and respect it, because there is some credence to what they're saying. There is a God within us. Okay. In Western philosophy, religion is separated from science. As an example is how the Constitution separates church from state. No prayers are allowed in public spaces. Science must be separated from spirituality. Now, I had personal experience because I told many of you that I used to be a basketball coach in high school for 20 years. And I could not lead my kids in prayer. So what I did was I told my kids, I'm going to step around the corner. You guys do your prayers and you lead yourself. I do believe in that, but I could not do it because based on the rules in my job, for me to do that, if a child went home and was Muslims, let's say, for example, and told their parents, Mom, I felt a little bad today because Coach Hicks, he started leading us in a Christian prayer. And, I'm Muslim, so I didn't know what to do. I could have possibly, I'm not going to say lose my job, but I definitely could have been brought up on charges. Because in the Constitution, it clearly states you must separate church from state. And there's good reason for that. Because back in the 16th and 15th century, the Europeans used church as a means to undermine everything and for them to grab power and control people. So when those founding fathers came here, one of the things they want to make sure didn't happen, what happened in Europe. So they injected into the Constitution separation from church and state. In African philosophy, and this is it, science and spirituality are one and the same coin. Yes, we don't separate church from state. In other words, one does not exist without the other. Yes, science and spirituality, religion work interchangeably. Professor Kaba Kamene, many of you should know. If you haven't, please get into him, read his book. He's the author of Spirituality Before Religion, and he states, spirituality is unseen science, and science is seen spirituality. Contemplate on that for a minute. Because all of this is common sense, particularly if you're not too grounded, overwhelmed in just religion. Science and evidence. For our immediate studies, we will focus science and evidence to prove our claims of an African origin to humanity and mankind. The following slides are introduction to origins of mankind. Okay, this is for my claim. Now, this here is an image of the Bering Strait. That dotted line is there to indicate that this was the crossing path that allegedly the Mongolian Asians came across into America. Now, I wanted you to see this before we get into it because it's important to understand that this particular image here is shown without ice. This is a current picture without ice. So keep that in your back pocket because we're going to come back to it. And I'm going to tell you right now, folks, I think that's just enough. If you have any questions or comments, put them inside because Professor Hicks is going to sign off right now. I'll be back on tomorrow. Oh, I might not be tomorrow, but definitely by Wednesday, I'll be on again. And we're going to go into class 4. And as I said, we're going to talk about 2 things. We're going to talk about the Mongolians who came here first. We're going to talk to our Latino brothers and sisters about this white classification. And then we're going to continue to move on with Dr. David Imhotep's book. And with that, I'm going to say